Daryl Morey is at it again with a bit of a surprising move with the offseason in full swing. The end of the Ricky Council era has arrived in Philadelphia after just 2 short seasons for the Arkansas product. Ricky Council has officially been released by the Philadelphia 76ers to help paint a clearer picture of what next year's roster will fully look like. I'm going to dive into exactly what this means for this Sixers organization, why I'm a bit surprised at the timing, but not the decision for Ricky, and really reflect on where things went south for a guy that I think a lot of us had high hopes for. So to dive right into it, a short and sweet press release from the Philadelphia 76ers here, just titled Philadelphia 76ers Waive Ricky Council IV. And all that it says inside is July 25th, 2025, Philadelphia 76ers President of Basketball Operations Daryl Morey announced today that the team has waived Ricky Council IV. Council IV appeared in 105 games with 12 starts over 2 seasons with the 76ers, averaging 6.7 points, 2.5 rebounds, 1.1 assists in 14.6 minutes per game. Now, Ricky's a guy that I think a lot of us were excited about, fell in love with, and could believe could grow into this very productive player for the Sixers organization, but unfortunately, he just did not take those steps last year. Now, I know the immediate frustrations and reactions will be, we're keeping Kyle Lowry and Eric Gordon on roster at age 73 or whatever each of them is, and cutting loose a young athletic talent like Ricky Council IV. And I hear you, I understand, but I also sort of get where Daryl Morey is coming from. This is far more of a financially driven decision, and with the constraints of the roster, this is something that the writing has been on the wall for quite some time. Now, the timing of it is something that surprised me because Ricky Council was on a non-guaranteed deal. So it was a $2.3 million contract that he did have on the books heading into next year that the Sixers were free to cut ties with. That January 10th was the date where they could officially make that decision. I sort of was under the impression or expecting them to carry him in the beginning of the season and then make that decision a little bit midway through the year. But ultimately, I guess Daryl Morey doing him a little bit right here to grant him the freedom to find his next destination as he is officially a free agent. Now, reflecting on where things went south for Ricky Council, we got to start with the stats here. And to highlight what he produced on the court last year, in 17.1 minutes per game, 7.3 points, 2.9 rebounds, 1.3 assists, shot just 38.2% from the field, just 25.8% from beyond the three-point arc there. He is set to turn 24, and hopefully there are brighter days ahead for Ricky Council, but I do understand exactly where Daryl Morey is coming from. Now, to dive into the stats specifically, as I do want to compare the 2 seasons for his rookie year versus what he produced last year, you can see a bit of a step back. Not an opportunity, as obviously he only played in 32 games as a rookie, played in 73 for the Sixers last year, saw his minutes jump from 9 minutes per game as a rookie to 17.1 per game last year. But a lot of that was due to everything that went wrong last year, and the production did not match that. The biggest thing that jumps out to me is the three-point percentage here. Shot 37.5% as a rookie, that down to 25.8% just last year. And to give the totals here, as we had a clearer sample size, as I acknowledged in the leap in opportunity, that the volume, I think, was the defining factor here. You can see as a rookie, just 32 three-point attempts. He shot 12 for 32 on those, which does come out to 37.5. Last year, with a fuller sample size there, 213 three-point attempts for Ricky Council, made just 55 of those, which comes out to 25.8% there. It unfortunately boils down to a lot of these borderline guards here. The three-point percentage is going to be the make or break, and for Ricky Council IV, it was the break here. Now, why this is disappointing to me is I did want to pull up this quote from Tyrese Maxey here, who he talks about with Ricky specifically, and this coming from over a year ago to this point, that he says, quote, "After every shoot around, I make him shoot threes with me, because if he gets that down, especially like corner threes, he can be a special player in this league." I do think there was a genuine relationship between Maxey and Ricky Council, and that certainly plays into his favor for keeping him around, but not to the point where it is worth limiting your roster and flexibility for it. And I think that is the decision that the Sixers did ultimately fall on. We now have a onslaught of young athletes with guys like Justin Edwards emerging, VJ Edgecombe obviously selected with the 3rd overall pick, and a guy that is expected to make a day one impact for this Sixers team. Those are guys who had leapfrogged Ricky Council in the depth chart. When we have all our complaints about all the guards that are already on roster here, there kind of just was not a place for Ricky moving forward. This is a guy that I will be wishing the best. I do think he will likely get another NBA opportunity, and in a different setting, maybe he will be successful. But I will say, for me personally, what was most frustrating about Ricky's game last year is that was an environment which I thought he would thrive, where it was madness, where everything was going wrong, where he had the opportunity to be a guy, to kind of be the guy on the court in certain nights, and he did not make the most of it there. That I think my biggest concern for Ricky since he came to Philadelphia is I see the raw skills, I see the athleticism, I see how how good he can look when he is operating as sort of the hub of the offense or a primary guy with the ball in the hands a lot. But how does that work in a scaled down role? Can he be a guy that sits in the corner, make corner threes, defend at a high level, equate his athleticism to on-court production? Those were the questions that I had. But look back at last year, and he sort of had the free reign to do whatever he wants. To be the madness of Ricky Council, that is what makes his game unique. What makes his game special there, and it did not translate in the same way. There's some pretty clear numbers for why this was a guy who took a step back. Now, is this a little harsh from Daryl Morey and from the Sixers' perspective to cut ties after just 2 years, to not at least take him into the season and give him an opportunity to earn it? You can make that case absolutely, but I understand where they are coming from here. And to highlight the payroll here, do got to shout out my guy Jacob Moreno, as always, who did an awesome job putting this together. Shout out to Sixers Country, his page on Instagram there. Does a lot of awesome work for Sixers Sense as well. But he does break down sort of the salary cap outlook here. And the biggest story that I would note here is they're now down to 13 players on roster. Now, the vast assumption, and something that I'm pretty certain will be done based on how the restricted free agent market is shaking out to this point, is Quentin Grimes will be back in a Philadelphia 76ers uniform to some extent, and it's some dollar figure there. We will see what that number ultimately falls on, but that number will bring them to 14 players there. The Sixers have operated, since Daryl Morey has gotten to town, with a bit of a preference to keep an open roster spot. Now, part of that is financially motivated by being cheaper to not being employing a full 15-man roster, and the other part is the flexibility that it does bring on. A 2-for-1 trade that does pop up, where you can take in 2 players with just sending out one in a way that you do not have to cut any players there. I think the writing was on the wall for Ricky Council not being a long-term part of the Sixers organization, and they decided it was best to cut ties right here. Again, I do think this guy will get another NBA chance. If not, it would not shock me, and I don't mean this as a wild insult here, but he could be a guy that absolutely tears it up overseas. I mean, you can see a number of these guys. Miles Powell is a dude that pops to mind who sort of was in a similar role, who had a 2-way contract, kind of latched on for the Sixers for a bit. Obviously was an absolute bucket and a blast to watch during his days at Seton Hall. He is tearing it up in China right now, making a pretty penny, more than what he could make in the NBA based on what his skill set was, and I could see Ricky going down that path as well. Now, there's certainly a world in which he works out his problems. He finds a little bit more, of a clear role within an organization, because to be fair to Ricky here, expectations changed quite a bit last year, that this was not a guy that was asked to play a scaled down role, just hit corner threes. He had to make things happen out here, and I think he kind of got lost in the shuffle or battled with, juggling those different things that he was trying to do there. Now, for the Sixers overall, we do kind of have an idea of what the finished depth chart is going to look like. And shout out to Jacob Moreno again, who tweets this out, that you can see with the point guards. So there is Tyrese Maxey, Kyle Lowry, Jared McCain. I even think you can throw in that category, although we will see how this all shapes out when we see these guys on the floor. Of course, VJ Edgecombe and Eric Gordon, also a key part of that guard rotation there, and Hunter Salas on the 2-way as well. Have not seen a ton from Salas, but I'm still optimistic from what I've seen from his college tape there, and would like to see a little bit more of him. He did not pop to me in Summer League, but I will remain open-minded there. Then, of course, at small forward, Paul George, Kelly Oubre, and Justin Edwards. Power forward, we can have that conversation, but it is really this top end of the depth chart that I just don't see a lane for where Ricky Council can really earn anything or have any sort of type of role on this immediate Sixers team. Now, with the concept of keeping an empty roster spot, I would tell Morey to be a bit cautious about this, as I get the appeal of it. I understand the flexibility it brings, the money, the way that you can kind of keep yourself financially safe in a way here, but we also got to keep in mind the exact constraints that showed up last season. This is not a team that is young in the way that we know these guys are going to be on the court any given night. Who knows how many games Joel Embiid is playing? Who knows how many games that Paul George is playing for this Sixers team? That I do think it would be in the best interest to get more of a win-now piece to round out this roster. If that is Chris Boucher on a veteran's minimum, which they absolutely can pull off, or something along those lines, that would be something that would fire me up, and something that I hope is the case there. Ultimately, my expectations at this point in time, I would guess that Ricky Council ultimately finds a new NBA team for next season, and the Sixers enter next year with just 14 guys on the roster. To this point, we will see what happens, but I do want to wish Ricky Council a bit of a farewell and good luck for sure. This is a guy that I will be rooting for, certainly no hatred in the heart, but I do not think it was working out here in Philadelphia, and I think there are locations where he has a clearer pathway to earning an opportunity. So I do hope that is the case for him here. We will see ultimately what unfolds for the rest of this offseason for this Sixers team, and see where Ricky Council ends up himself. But let me know what you guys think about this. Are you more outraged than I am? I have kind of got the sense that plenty of people are upset about this. I sort of could see this coming. I'm surprised at the timing, not surprised at the decision, and we'll see what else unfolds from here. But let me know what you guys think in the comments. As always, appreciate you guys for tuning into this video here. Make sure you're dropping a like on the video if you have not already. Drop a subscribe to the channel. Let's get this Sixers Digest family continuing to grow. We'll be back talking with you next time. Peace.